Benjamin is my stupid chud son, and I love him now. Hello, and welcome back to Suckwar Central. My name is CJ, and today I want to put forth the idea that Benjamin is Halkenburg. Not literally, of course. What kind of idiot would put forth an idea that stupid? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that many years ago, Benjamin reached more or less the same conclusion as Halkenburg, and what we're seeing now is the result of that corruption arc. A man who once had an incredible potential for good turned into a willing murderer of children who will stop at nothing to win the succession war so that he can end it forever. Now, I want to make one thing incredibly clear. Benjamin absolutely is a villain. But what I'm interested in is exploring how and why this came to be, because I think Togashi has given us enough clues to figure out exactly that. For starters, it's clear that Benjamin, just like Halkenburg, feels that there are some things deeply wrong with the Kakin Empire. He describes the so-called Great Tree of Kakin as having diseased branches, and he seems to consider things like the Carne Levare as evil, immoral debauchery. And what's more, Benjamin is one of the only princes to take his responsibility as ruler of the country, should he win the succession war, seriously. Many of the other princes would love to be king in order to enact their own agendas without a care for much else, but Benjamin cares too much. He has very, very strong morals and clearly always has had them. They're not all good morals, but by God does he believe in them with all he's got. From what he's expressed, the main reasons he wants to be king are world domination, and trust me, we'll get to that, but more specifically because the idea that any of the others could become king terrifies him to his core for the future of the country. Benjamin seems to recognize the injustice of the royal and succession war system. Rather than choosing the next ruler through a meritocratic means, it limits the pool to members of the royal family who can be whatever sort of dipshit, really. The idea of the contest is to pick a shrewd and conniving ruler who balances all the qualities the first king of Kakin thought the king would need. But the first king only cared if the country survived. Benjamin wants to achieve more than that. He wants the Kakin Empire to prosper and to be a shining beacon of progress, morality, and strength for the rest of the world to look upon. Anyway, I believe Benjamin, for one reason or another, truly internalized from a young age that this country would one day be the responsibility of him or one of his siblings to rule. And honestly, I think the siblings that Benjamin grew up with illustrate why he is the kind of person that he is. I mean, you have to remember, this child's first introduction to the concept of this is who you're going to be competing for the throne with was a petulant, arrogant, delusional woman with no real idea how anything works and violent tendencies just oozing out of her. And then look at the next ones who came along, like Zhang Lei, a shifty, two-faced, and apparently overindulgent scumbag who has ties to the mafia. Benjamin clearly values honesty, or at the very least honor, of which he has a pretty strong code. And then, of course, psoriasis. For someone with a strong sense of morality like Benjamin, this guy is the epitome of moral degeneracy, and yet, as things are, the Kakin Empire just allows him to get away with it. So what I'm trying to say is that of the four eldest princes, Benjamin is the only one who seems to take the weight of ruling a country seriously, and he had to watch his younger siblings turn into Patrick Bateman, a scheming sleazeball, and Kim Kardashian with a gun. While Benjamin was doing his very best to develop himself into the best possible future ruler of the country that he could, all the other strongest candidates for the throne were getting their freak on, funding human trafficking rings, and growing up to be complete and utter lunatics who should never even be class president, let alone king of a country. As this became apparent, I believe Benjamin had a sort of realization that this was a deeply unjust, illogical, and outdated system, which led to a crisis of morality similar to Halkenburg's. If you're a moralistic guy like Benjamin, it quickly becomes clear when you put yourself into his shoes that any system in which psoriasis has a high chance of becoming king is, not a very good one. And yes, there might be other children born into the family who Benjamin may one day consider fit to be king, but around this time, Benjamin likely also became acquainted with the private army and Queen's Guard aspects of the succession contest. See, the contest is heavily skewed toward the older princes, who have significantly more personnel to work with. As Tebepa tells Psoriasis on the first day, this is a contest between the eldest five, and the younger princes don't have enough power or connections to win. It's a horribly unfair system, and I honestly imagine that Benjamin had a similar crash out at Nasabi to the one Halkenburg did. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if, just like Halkenburg, he attempted to assassinate Nasibi. After all, Nasibi goes against Benjamin's morals, like participating in carnivals. In fact, I'd go so far as to say Benjamin probably hates his dad's guts, and is only holding back his barely contained bloodlust because he legally has to show him respect and doesn't want to stoop to Camilla's level. I mean, look at the scene where he and Nasibi interact. After Camilla makes a fool of herself, Benjamin chooses his words carefully. He says that as Camilla's older brother, he is ashamed of her behavior, but he doesn't apologize for it. And note that while his tone is polite and formal, nothing in his monologue about how he's going to be king implies any sort of respect for Nasibi. He loudly and threateningly declares his intent to purge the diseased branches of the Great Tree of Kakin, and while I used to assume that he meant it in a "I'll make you proud, Dad" sort of way, recent context has changed that. As I go back over this scene, I mean, he's looking right at Nasibi, figuratively and literally, when he says this. I honestly see it as a threat. Benjamin is saying, "Father, I am going to kill you the second I become king and legally can, so your ass better hope I don't win." And after all this, he stalks off thinking, "I'll kill them all," and man, I can't help but feel like Nasibi is probably included in that, especially since he's already thinking of killing Unma. Anyway, I've gotten a little off track, but what I'm trying to say is that Benjamin and Halkenburg are similar in that they've both made the trolley problem calculation, and I bet they got the idea from the same guy. So back to what I think his life was like. We have a young Benjamin, likely feeling lost and infuriated, just like Halkenburg. He knows that he can't change the country without becoming king, and with all the strongest candidates for the throne besides him being complete whack jobs, Benjamin probably feels weak, helpless, and most importantly, alone. He has to carry the burden of being the only worthy candidate for the throne by himself, and he has to prepare to fight. He's devoted to fixing this damn country and determined to give it everything he has for this eventual conflict, but he needs the tools to engage in combat. So what does he do? He joins the army.
They want you, they want you, they want you as a new recruit. Who, me?
Yes, Benjamin, in order to prepare for a succession war, is the only one to literally join the army, except maybe Camilla. It's not clear how exactly that works, if she's actually in the army or if she just has a private army. Point is, Benjamin is clearly the military guy and the one who is taking the concept of the succession war most seriously. Benjamin probably decided to take advantage of his status as the first prince to secure a high position in the army and gather a collection of trustworthy soldiers for his cause. But it's more than that. I assume he joined the army looking to make himself into a stronger person and devote his life to preparing to fight to save his country from the clutches of psoriasis. And on top of that, Benjamin probably needed friends. Like I've been saying, he reached the conclusion at a young age that any hypothetical younger princes who might turn out good like him would be too disadvantaged to stand a real chance in the succession war, and that there was no one else he could count on. That's another reason I believe he turned to the army, where he could seek out the best of the best in like-minded allies for his private army. From every perspective, practical and emotional, joining the army just makes sense for young Benjamin, and for someone feeling alienated from his family, I have no doubt that the army instilled in Benjamin a great many of the values that made him the sort of person he is. Think about the kinds of people who often populate a country's military. They tend to strongly believe that they are doing the right thing as soldiers for their country and value discipline, order, respect, and honor. In other words, the main things that Benjamin finds severely lacking when he looks at his disgraceful siblings who he's doing all this to keep out of power. It's clear based on his interactions with Furikov and how Balsamilka regards him that Benjamin's bonds with his soldiers are very personal and forged of steel. Of course, that's not all. The army may instill these positive values in people, but Togashi's not the kind of bootlicker to pretend that the military is all sunshine and roses, especially the military of a country that has empire in its name. As a soldier, Benjamin learned how to take lives, commit war crimes like using TSK-17, and most importantly of all, to justify these acts. He joined the army to harden his heart and learn to kill, and by God did he learn. And what's more, militaries often propagate certain ideas through their ranks. It's not uncommon for soldiers, particularly higher-ranking ones, to have rather strong opinions when it comes to government policy and to think, we could do a better job than the idiots in charge. That faction of the Kakinese military, who would of course be executed for treason if they ever organized by themselves, suddenly had a voice for that in Benjamin, who joined their organization precisely because he felt that the country was being run poorly. It makes all the sense in the world for these renegades to rally around Benjamin, who would give them a legitimate and legal way to make what was before a pipe dream into reality. The military, I'm sure, is where Benjamin picked up his beliefs that a strongman ruler would be superior to anything like democracy, and why he regards Camilla and Halkenburg as equivalent threats to the state, moving the country as he sees it closer to democracy should they become king. People like Conchidal, who casually state their distaste for democracy, make it clear that this isn't the rarest sentiment in the Kakinese army, and really, I think his belief in fighting for virtue, valor, and his country is what led to his desire to forge Kakin into a globally dominant superpower. It's just the most extreme version of military jingoism and of the common mentality espoused by many certain countries' soldiers of, it's our responsibility to spread democracy to these heathens. Benjamin sees the country's resources and what the military can build, and then he looks at people like Nasabi and Camilla and goes, we as a country are wasting our potential, and I need to be the one to fix that because this horribly unfair, poorly designed, corrupt system and the circumstances of my birth dictate that I need to be the one to fix everything. It all has to be me. I have to be the strong man. In a better, kinder world, Benjamin and Halkenburg would have worked together to fix Kakin, but that ship has unfortunately sailed. And speaking of Halkenburg, I'm always going on and on about how Benjamin and Halkenburg parallel each other, but rarely do I elaborate. So let's take a minute to do that for once. They're children of Unma who feel the need to win the succession contest in order to fix the country, who view the whole thing from a trolley problem perspective. They both think of their siblings as tragic but necessary sacrifices and have nen abilities related to passing their will onto other people. They both cultivate a group of extremely loyal followers willing to die for them in order to fuel their nen. Their nen beasts are hulking monsters that perch on their shoulders. They're both highly intelligent but act far too impulsively. Both are respected by some of their younger siblings but utterly despised by others. They're the only princes who have thus far employed TSK-17 with their own hands, no less. Both of their plans to win the succession war involve abandoning their original bodies, and obviously, they're visually similar. Halkenburg really does look like a younger Benjamin in all sorts of ways, but the symbolism is pretty evident to me. They are, and always have been, two sides of the same coin. Halkenburg is Togashi showing us the tragic arc that Benjamin underwent in real time, and we can see traces of it elsewhere in the succession war. Even though he's been poisoned by the ideology he's been steeped in since birth, having to always choose between the lesser of two evils, Benjamin has a certain kindness in his heart, and genuinely doesn't want to hurt most of his family, only doing so to prevent this from happening again and fixing the country. I think it's telling how one of his first thoughts after coming up with his plan is that Bohemian Rhapsody will overthrow and replace the succession war system. The moment he sees a way he can end this corrupt hierarchy forever, he takes it. And what's more, as part of his cover story for martial law, Benjamin says that ending the succession war can destroy the monarchy but allow the siblings to live. Tebeppa distrusts this, pointing out that in such a case, the country would fall into military rule and Benjamin would still end up ruling it. And you know what? If not for the TSK-17, I'm willing to believe that this might have ended up being the plan Benjamin came up with after Kurapika divulged his information. Obviously, I still think he would have killed the hardliners like Camilla and Psoriasis, who wanted the succession war to happen, or would otherwise never accept this outcome, but I think that could have been an almost peaceful solution that the story could have ended up with if not for Beyond Netero and his meddling schemes. I also think it's telling how Tyson and Tebeppa view Benjamin compared to how the younger princes do. Tyson honestly says that succession war aside, she thinks Benjamin is the most fit to be king, and while Tebeppa regards him as an enemy who's trying to kill her, she doesn't even seem to consider the idea that going to room 1001 is a death trap where summary execution awaits, despite this seeming like the most incredibly obvious conclusion to the readers. I've used this as evidence for Tebeppa being academically smart yet socially dumb, but in retrospect, I think that Tyson and Tebeppa have different views of Benjamin because they know what he was like when he was younger and haven't seen the extent of his transformation, being as they have separated as they grew older. while the younger princes only know the brutal killing machine Benjamin forged himself into over the years by his reputation and, the fact that he's sending a bunch of assassins their way, and the oldest princes are scumbags who were Benny Boy's ops from day one, Tyson and Tabeppa may very well have different views of Benjamin as a kind yet stern, serious, and overzealous older brother who is genuinely trying his best, even if it means he's too arrogant, he's too overzealous, he's too enthusiastic and eager to kill, and he's going to try to kill them, and they know it. Although on some level, it probably still doesn't quite feel that way. Furthermore, I view Benjamin's extremely quick acceptance of his own death as quite telling as well. If I were in his place, I'd have been like, hey, Furikov, man, what the fuck? Why didn't you run this by me earlier? Could we have maybe come up with a better solution than, you dosing me with poison without telling me? Meanwhile, Benjamin's just like, well, guess we're doing Mandate of Heaven now. I think he feels a sense of disgust with the whole monarchic system and is eager to purge this entire generation and start fresh. He might even feel a sense of guilt over his actions, and I also think his comment about wishing Fugetsu were reborn into a regular family is a bit of projection on his part. Benjamin is literally intending to be reborn himself, and if you look at things from his point of view, how could you not feel resentful and like you were robbed of a normal life, being shackled with the burden of saving your country from your relatives by virtue of being born into the Huiguoro family? And then there's a couple facts that are the last two cherries on top of this whole tragedy Sunday for me. The first is Benjamin's Nen ability, Benjamin Baton, which shows a lot about how the guy views death. Benjamin Baton makes perfect sense for someone who views violence as a necessary evil. Just like Benjamin hopes to use the sacrifice of his siblings to create a centralized, unified country, he also uses the sacrifice of his soldiers to consolidate power in himself, even though both types of sacrifice pain him deeply. Then, of course, there's the fact that Benjamin's Nen Beast, a reflection of his subconscious, is ultimately self-sacrificial in nature. It allows him to keep on living, of course, but it removes his qualification for the throne. I want you to think about that for a second. He got a Nen Beast with an ability that literally only activates if he gives up the right to be king. Despite how hard he's trying to win the succession war, he does not want this on a genuine personal level. It's like a larger scale version of Kacho's Nen Beast, and honestly, that makes it hit even harder for me that Benjamin cares about Fugetsu so much. He's trying to kill his whole family right now, but subconsciously, he wishes he could protect his whole family. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and what makes Benjamin so heartbreaking for me is that he is so thoroughly convinced that this is what he has to do in order to save the country. He has to become a child murderer, he has to become a military dictator, he has to do it all because it's his responsibility that he was born into, and better him than anyone else who's eligible. He had to shut out all distractions and eliminate any doubt that this is the way things have to be, or else he wouldn't be able to go through with it. And despite resolving to kill his siblings for the throne, he has a Nen Beast that will probably be used to protect them, because I really don't think baby Jimin is going to pan out, sorry. This, to me, shows that even though he's resolved to sacrifice his family, he really, really doesn't want to kill most of them, and is tormented by guilt over his mission to kill people like Tyson and Fugetsu, who he views as good, innocent people. The fact that his Nen Beast merges with Benjamin Baton also shows how Benjamin mourns the loss of his soldiers and wants to carry their will forward, which is how he views inheriting those Nen abilities as seen in the chapter where Benjamin Baton is revealed. As I discussed in my video on all the unknown Nen Beasts a few weeks ago, before Bohemian Rhapsody's ability was actually revealed in the manga, Benjamin's Nen Beast has always been unique. In Japanese, all the other guardian spirit beasts are described as belonging to their respective princes, but Bohemian Rhapsody is described as haunting Benjamin. It's a manifestation of all his inner turmoil, conflict, and guilt, and yeah, quite literally haunts him in every sense of the word. Also, when we think of these Nen Beasts as reflecting the prince's mental states and internal desires and subconscious minds, I think the moment where his Nen Beast expels the spirits on Fugetsu is very sweet, and the care Benjamin shows for Fugetsu makes me tear up. And surprise, this video is actually a Fugetsu Copium video the whole time. Because yes, in my chapter review, I posited that Benjamin's Nen Beast might end up haunting Psoriasis next. But what if, instead, knowing his plan has failed, he hasn't managed to kill all the princes and the succession war will go on as Nasabi intended, Benjamin instead sends Bohemian Rhapsody to protect Fugetsu. It would be a way to purge her of the curses on her, plot-wise, and also it would, in my opinion, serve as an actual bit of redemption for Benjamin. It's too late for him to be a good person, to turn himself around, and to escape the cycle of death, corruption, and pain that has claimed yet another prince. But it's not too late for him to save someone else from that fate, even in death. It's not too late for him to lift the cloud of violence and death that has engulfed Fugetsu and save her from the kind of fate he suffered. In any case, folks, I'm gonna end the video here before I get too much more emotional. I hope you enjoyed my incessant Hunter x Hunter yapping, and I hope you join me next time. Oh, and of course, I hope you have a wonderful day!